The master was teaching his students. Every single person had to freeze in the horse's pose for 2 long hours. Mujene glanced around and then knew something wasn't right. It was something anyone should have known. Those unlucky folks were headed for torn knees and broken backs. The master knew his ways were right and walked with complete confidence. Suddenly, Mujene roared at them, calling them ignorant worms who knew nothing, and the shock on the master and sect leaders' faces was absolute. Even the students were left speechless. The master pointed a finger and demanded to know if Mujene had lost his brain just like he'd lost his hair. The grown-ups instantly blamed him for making excuses because the training was proving too tough. Mujene refused to back down and insisted the training was wrong. The master was livid because the kid was daring to say that the 1,000-year-old Shaolin training was wrong. Mujene warned that holding that stance would wreck your knees before you ever built up any real leg strength. The master had absolutely no idea what he was saying about knee cartilage. He blamed him for making excuses once more, claiming Mujene was simply too weak to handle the training. The MC then asked, if martial arts are about training the body and mind, how can anyone say a weak person can't do it? The master stood there with his mouth wide open, unable to think of a single thing to say. Mujene pressed on. If this harsh training is meant to toughen young minds for tomorrow's battles, then surely all the adults who endured it should have found peace, yet they haven't, and his words made the young baldies start to doubt everything. Suddenly, the master pointed at a young student and asked why the old man still hadn't found enlightenment by now. The man's furious scream made Mujene realize for the first time that he was truly in danger. The old man stepped forward and offered a daring deal. If the disciple truly believed he was ready, he had to defeat the other students without ever doing their training. He had to win a fight against the student who was the best in the class. The strong, chubby kid was his match, so he stood up and said yes to the fight. But on the other side of things, Mujene knew deep down that this wasn't fair. The fighters were in totally different weight classes. The man tried to make our boy run away, but he refused and stepped up to take the fight. The man fought hard to keep his anger hidden, knowing that the kid's stubbornness was becoming a real problem. The old man spun around and told everyone to keep training, leaving Mujene free to practice whatever he wanted until the fight. A friend said Mujene was incredibly brave, yet crazy for making up tall tales about his knees. The old master called out to everyone, telling them to get back to their training right away. The old man from earlier was just as angry about being questioned in front of everyone. Just watch the students' reactions. They've lost faith in the training methods. The fight is only 7 days away. Mujene began his personal workout right in front of the crowd. Older students tried to scare him for doing things his own way, but the master was right there to say it was okay. Our boy also seized the moment to tell the students around him that their knees must be in agony from standing that way. What none of them knew was that Mujene wasn't the boy he used to be. Once, Mujene was a gym owner in the modern world before he lived another life. He built his own muscles to teach his students how to grow their bodies naturally. His work made all the guys and girls look even better. That crazy fan of Murmur Manus ended up drifting off in his sleep, or maybe even passed away while reading it. The only thing that truly counts is that he woke up inside the body of a young boy named Mujene. The 200-pound personal trainer had become a young, bald Shaolin monk, and his memories were now exactly those of the main character in the book he'd just read. On his very first day, he watched the baldies train, and he simply couldn't stop himself from questioning everything. Now he faces a test to show the masters that there is a truly right way to train the body. While the other students tremble from pain and weariness, Mujene keeps pushing his body far beyond its limits without feeling a thing. After 2 hours of training, Gang suddenly feels hungry when Will calls him for a meal. He glances at the food and wonders if that's all there is to eat. At a long table, one master calls out to everyone to come eat. Mujene recalls that temple food is vegetarian and asks, "Where's the protein?" while realizing how vivid the dream's food smells. Mujene hits the table in anger, screaming that feeding them only vegetables feels like abuse and demanding to know who dares disturb a meal after a long morning of training. While Magong agrees he's been causing trouble since dawn and threatens to teach the chef a lesson. But when head chef Yun Moon arrives to offer more rice, Mujene refuses and insists on protein like chicken to build his muscles, leaving the other monks confused by his strange behavior. The training feels tough, but the food just smells like food. And he asks himself, if this is a dream, why am I still asleep? Thinking it might actually be true, he decides he has to be extra careful. Remembering his training at the Shaolin Temple, Mujene bows and apologizes for speaking out of hunger, but the head chef only nods and guesses that he must be tired from training, leaving Mujene to ask if he can eat beans or mushrooms while the chef stares at him in silence without answering. Whether it was a dream or real, Mujene needed that protein anyway. The endless cycle of training, eating breakfast, and studying ancient texts felt like a heavy weight dragging him down. Realizing he's trapped inside a book, he worries how to get home, then gets a new idea. Maybe he can walk out the moment the story finishes. As the main character of a legendary martial arts school, he naturally had to be incredibly talented. He accidentally spills ink on his book and now faces a whole new mess. He sees that the other monks have surrounded him and that he has made too much of a scene for his own good. Everyone stares at him in silence, but he decides there's nothing left to do since he's already there. Master Haizhong asked the head chef if it was true, and when the chef confirmed that the boy was truly strange, Hai and Moon asked what would become of Mujene, to which Master Haizhong explained that he had given the boy a week to defend his claims by challenging Ma Gong. And while Hai and Moon praised this wise way to avoid criticism, he still questioned the choice to make Mujene face Ma Gong. Every year, the Shaolin Temple welcomes hundreds of kids to try out, but most of them quit before they can handle the tough training. Only a few who begin are truly chosen as disciples, so most senior monks don't even know the children's names. Yet Ma Gong was one of the lucky few picked to teach a boy a lesson after a week had passed since Master Haizhong promised it would happen. Then he asked if they were both ready. Turning around, Will asked Mujene what he was up to. He said they were just doing warm-up stretches. To make it sound like true martial arts, he named the move the forelimb extension technique. Starting your warm-up with stretching helps get your muscles ready and loosens up your ligaments. There are so many different ways to stretch and move that are all designed to make you more flexible and let your body move further. Mujene invited Muil to join him and said that getting into the habit was good, while other monks watched with curiosity, wondering what they were doing and what those strange poses meant. Seeing right away, Muil jumped in to learn, and Mujene praised his quickness until a monk suddenly pointed at Ma Gong's punches and asked if that was the chain fist. Ma Gong punched the air, and the other monks whispered in awe that they could even hear the air crackle from his mighty blows. Realizing he was in trouble and had to win in just a week, Mujene wondered how on earth he could ever take the other guy down. Suddenly a bright idea sparked in his mind, and he instantly knew exactly what to do. Thinking back on that time, Master Haizhong recalled how Mujene insisted he wasn't making excuses to skip training, even though he ignored orders and followed his own strange ways instead. Explaining all, Mujene said, "I'm practicing how to take down Ma Gong in a single move," but he still wondered why the boy kept rubbing that tree. And with full confidence, he believed Ma Gong would handle that child's attitude problem without a second thought. Seeing Master Hong stare, Ma Gong quickly decided that the boy would have to be the stepping stone he needed. Mujene stood ready before his rival, keeping his cool despite the tension. Then he stood up and stretched out his back. He gestured and asked Master Haizhong if they could get started. The boy's attitude was so annoying to both the master and Ma Gong that it hung heavy in the air. Ma Gong stepped forward and said, "I'll show you," while Mujene stood ready with a smile, proud of the way Ma Gong had spent all that time perfecting his chain fist. Then the master roared, "Start," and Mujene launched himself forward without a second's delay. Ma Gong was startled and moved quickly to react to the sudden rush. Seeing how dangerous it was, he knew he'd have to strike fast. The other monks and the master were shocked to see how quickly he dodged the chain fist. Seizing Ma Gong, he moved carefully, knowing he couldn't use his real fighting moves on a child. After training for real fighting where mistake could mean death, he realized the only safe move was one even a child could survive. Mujene didn't hesitate, driving Ma Gong straight to the ground with a powerful tackle. In just a second, Mujene shouted while locking his arm around the other monk, leaving him confused as Ma Gong urged him to hold on. Stunned by what they were seeing, they wondered if Brother Ma Gong had already started to lose. Ma Gong lay twitching on the ground, still trying to figure out what had just happened. The monks cried out in a desperate plea, urging him to use his legs and roll. But they realized it was too late. Even though they didn't know what an arm lock was, years of training warned them, so when they saw that painful position, they instantly recognized it. Mujene warned the boy that his arm would break if he kept fighting, but as the boy shouted that other monks told him to stand, he was reminded that his opponent had no training at all. Mujene pressed him, asking if he felt the bone about to snap and the damage might be permanent, then demanded that Ma Gong either break free or give up. The monks kept shouting Ma Gong's name over and over as if they couldn't stop. As they watched the scene unfold, Mujene and the monks never took their eyes off it. Right away, he let him go and said he was sorry. Turning around, one monk glanced at Master Haizhong and asked what they should do next. As Mujene walked up to Ma Gong on the ground, he explained that forcing a grown man to fight a child is exactly what happened, and he noted that an old book records the basics of the chain fist technique. This style of the 8 extremes fist uses only fists, elbows, and shoulders to smash through foes at close range and take them down in an instant. Among the young beginners, Ma Gong was the one who learned this trick the best. Even the older disciples were amazed by his chain fist. But that morning, a troublemaker's strange new trick beat the amazing technique. He barely fought back before he was totally beaten. He sits down and complains about the cheap shot, and Mujene asks what he means. Magong shouts that he was hit immediately with a weird move, then screams he'd have wanted a real fight while Mujene comforts him. As they leave, Magong corrects the name mix-up, and other monks watch, insisting he broke the rules by not using the chain fist. Mujene replied that if he'd used it, they'd just have been trading heavy blows, and both would have ended up seriously hurt, but he won while keeping the other person safe. But the other monk insists it's not how it works, demanding Shaolin methods, and they won't believe the Shaolin chain fist was beaten so easily by an untrained boy using strange tricks. One of them admits Magong lost and wonders if they're being unreasonable. But he worries that if this goes on, people will stop believing in Shaolin martial arts. And in the worst case, the school could lose all its students. They turn to face Master Hij Jiang and ask him what they should do next. Then they spot him smiling and start wondering what he's up to. Master Hij Jiang calls out to Mujene, who rushes over to learn that the Shaolin spirit allowed them to subdue Magong without causing harm. So Mujene proudly declares himself the winner of the day's challenge. The monks gasp in surprise as they react to the decision. Mujene questions himself, wondering why the master has suddenly become so lenient. Master Hai Jiang reveals that his opponent only knows brute force, so he prepares to prove the true power of Shaolin by dragging a giant stone to the center of the courtyard to crush evil. Mujene clears the way for the two monks, doubts whether he can break it with his bare hands, and realizes he is about to make his own personal demonstration. He plants his feet firmly, tells everyone to watch closely since this is what they're training for, and then puts his hand on the rock to show the real power of the chain fist. With a loud shout, he throws a hard punch right at the rock. The rock snaps and shatters into many fragments. Murmuring to one another, they realize the true strength of the chain fist and finally understand why he was chosen as the first disciple. Mujene beams with delight, shouting, "This is the real art of the Murim." Murim martial arts are so powerful that a single explosion could punch right through a mountain. They can knock out hundreds of foes with one sword swing or blow an enemy apart with a single punch, but as one monk interrupts to ask if the real goal isn't defense, the master nods and says yes, only for another to gesture at the ground and wonder if they need to fight that hard, to which the master replies perhaps not. Before the scene calms in the morning, and someone asks if the child Mujene truly bested Magong in just a split second. Hai Jiang confirms he is right, and his master realizes the boy is more than just a strange child. Explaining himself, he admits that while he criticizes morning training, Mujene still practices the chain fist better than all the other novices. He asks once more if the boy is studying the technique just to find a way to beat it. Hai Jiang nods to confirm, and Hein Song asks for his thoughts, suggesting the boy might be a spy from the dark faction or a cult. Surprised by what he saw, the doubt vanished and he fell silent. Meanwhile, Mujene gets irritated by the old scrolls while his master starts to wonder if the kid might actually be a spy. Master Hai Jiang wonders if the child is a spy, but Hainong doubts it, noting that a true spy would never draw so much attention unless their goal was to interfere. He says there's no need to worry, because the boy is just a new student and time will show if he's a spy or simply an odd child. Then, a fresh idea pops into his head. Thinking the boy might be from a martial arts family, he suggests it as a possibility. After all, Mujene couldn't have made those strange tricks on his own, so he's probably just borrowing moves from his clan. He thinks the boy would toss aside 1,000 years of Shaolin wisdom just to prove his family's moves are better than his dad's. After beating Magong, he'd become even more driven, which could make things much harder. Heian suggests that maybe they should turn to Bai-Up Gang for help. Hai Jiang is so shocked that he wonders if Bai-Up Gang has finally become a member of the Discipline Hall. Reassuring him, his master says that the Bai-Up Gang still sees him as part of the Arhat Hall, and that his involvement changes everything. Far away, 3 young monks pack up and head back inside to end their day of training. Suddenly, one of them decides to change his mind and leads the group down a different path, leaving the others feeling totally lost. Curious, they all peered outside, wondering if he had truly seen a ghost. Peering into the courtyard, they spot a man practicing and can't help but wonder why he's there. One of the monks gasps, "It's the Inquisitor, Brother Beapang," while the others stare in confusion at the man who usually trains late at night, now standing in a horse stance, guessing he's either there to push them harder or because he's just as intense as his nickname suggests, until one laughs that the wild attack dog of the Discipline Hall has finally found his place. Only to be corrected that Brother Beapang will be joining them at the Arhat Hall starting tomorrow. Surprised, the others asked how this was possible since they thought he would begin at the Discipline Hall next term. Everyone knew the BUP gang was high up in the ranks and demanded strict discipline from its third generation of disciples. Everyone started whispering that he went to every hall to learn the rules before coming back to the discipline hall. Buy-up gang was tough, but they never asked anyone to do something they wouldn't do themselves. From his first day of training until the very end, he pushed his body harder than anyone, wearing down his knees until they barely worked, yet he walked through constant pain with all his might because he believed that pain was simply the price of his sacred journey. After holding the horse stance for 30 minutes, he stands up and asks, "Where is the child, Mujene?" as he pictures the troublemaker and rising star of the Arhat Hall that Master Hyunong had told them about. The next morning, the young monks stare forward, and one of them asks what they are seeing. Standing before the new recruits, Brother Bayop Gang declares that he has been transferred back and will now be with them. One of the boys is left surprised and laughing as Bay Gang tells them they just need to get used to the idea. Watching him closely, Mujene realizes he has the look of a soldier. While the other monks whisper to each other about why he's back, Mujene just watches as confusion spreads among the novices who don't understand why Bop Gang is there. Even in the middle of the chaos, Mujene figures out the truth right away. The new instructor was actually the sergeant from his own time. As the morning training begins, the boy shrugs it off, thinking it's not his problem. Right away, Beep Gang shouts for everyone to drop into a horse stance. As he walked among the disciples, he said that before correcting anyone, you first need to know exactly what they're doing wrong. To strike with precision, you must first know them. He starts to check to see how they're doing. As he watches one of the monks, he sees him sitting tall with his legs wide open and his toes pointing straight ahead. Bayop Gang struck the same pose and asked, "What are you doing, young one?" But when he saw the breaths match the movements, he realized the pain was just like the horse stance and it was all a trick. As Mujene stood up, the Bayop Gang called out, "Your stance is all wrong." And when he asked how it could be wrong, he knew he had to fix every single part of himself. Mujene doesn't know why they are copying him, but he can feel his knees clicking every time they bend. Feeling the discomfort, he realizes he can't just ignore the way that man's knees are screaming for help. In the end, he realizes that having the drill sergeant right there would give him a huge edge. Mujene smiles as Bup Gang asks once more what's wrong. The young man with bad knees explains that exercise won't help, then asks if he can show you something. Later, he shows off a stretch on the ground. Mujene is being praised for his flexibility while the other monks in the background look on, wondering what is going on. Correcting himself, he calls the move the forelimb extension technique, explaining that this position lets the knee muscles relax. He nods and explains that warming up this way will make moving easier in practice and take less pressure off his knees. Bop Gang nods in agreement, sensing the shift, and then he tells them to do 3 sets of 30 seconds each. They had to do the move 3 times, and since that first round was done, they were starting all over again. Mujene sees the Bayop Gang lying on the ground. As he gets closer, he starts rubbing the man's leg and asks if he feels better now. Seeing how he flinched at the slightest touch, he realized that even a gentle squeeze felt like agony. He realized that years of overtraining had left his knees in that condition. As the massage goes on, Bu Peng starts to notice something shift. At first it felt like an attack, but now the pain fades and the feeling turns almost pleasant. Mujene tells him they've only practiced twice and need one more, but BUP Gang asks if it must be done right now, only for the young man to push him and say training never waits, leaving BUP Gang to wonder who that kid is while Master Hai Zhang and his disciples watch from afar. Mujene explains that this is the right way to work out when your knees hurt. They called him the Inquisitor because he followed the rules so hard that he became a true fanatic. Because of his fanatical devotion, his fellow second-generation disciples never had a moment's rest, even as novices, so they couldn't understand why Bop Gang was with the novices doing those strange movements. Midway through their training, Mujene calls for a break, and just as the boy questions why he's allowed to squat so low despite Mujene's warning about his knees, the boy presses him on it. Explaining that a slight bend is better for relieving pressure, he decides to review what BUP Gang needs to do, and BOP Gang agrees. First, he tells him to bend his knees and lower his body down slowly. Secondly, he explains that you should move your legs from your hips and glutes, not your knees. Finally, he shows him how to use those same muscles to pull himself back up. Once the workout is done, Mujene checks on Bup Gang, who says he feels okay, so they agree to take a break. Seeing the shift, he realized he definitely felt much less pain that time. Mujene shouts that since the 3 sets are done, it's time to tackle the calves. Remembering that tough military clients showed up all the time, he recalled it. He also remembers that the tougher they seemed, the easier it was to win them over with praise. And while Mujene praises him for learning quickly, the Bay Gang laughs and notes that he's been a Shaolin disciple for 18 years. The other monks wonder aloud what happened to the wild dog that has become so calm. Watching the scene, Master He Zhang's blood pressure spikes, so he turns to Buddha for help. With a pounding headache, he decides to push through for a bit longer until the bell rings to signal that training is over and it's time to eat breakfast. Mujene advises him to always warm up his legs before starting any workout, using what he has learned to guide him. Buy-Up Gang agrees to Mujene's influence, completely won over, but still remembering why he came here. After trying physiotherapy, stretching, and massage, he realizes those techniques are incredible because his knee pain almost vanished and his muscles felt the power of the training. So Buy-Up Gang asks if he picked up all those tricks from his family. Seeing how impressive they looked, he guessed the boy was from a powerful family, and Mujene realized they thought those special skills were family secrets passed down for generations. Realizing this, he decides his story will finally explain all the strange attitudes he has seen so far. Smiling, the young man explains that these are tricks his family taught him, and the Buy-Up Gang laughs with delight, calling them truly amazing. Clarifying that Buy-Up Gang only praise the amazing healing skills of Shaolin because nothing in martial arts beats its long history. Mujene promises Mule he will keep Brother Buy-Up Gang's words in mind. Turning around, he announces he's done and asks to leave, only for Mujene to tell Mule he should have kept moving, while Mule replies that he wanted to wait for his friend. Startled, Buy-Up Gang jumps to find Master He Zhang right behind him, and he quickly apologizes for the awkward scene, which He Zhang calmly acknowledges he understood. Laughing, Buy-Up Gang says he went through the beginner's training to understand the enemy, and the master asks how it felt. As the young men walked away, Bei Gang started sharing what he saw about that child, Mujene. He reveals that the boy isn't from a martial arts clan, but a medical one. So He Zhang asks how he knows, and Buy-Up Gang begins to explain. At first, he admits his knees are nearly destroyed from years of training. And when a master asks why he hid the truth, he explains that he didn't want to worry the elders or show weakness to his disciples. Only for that one child to spot his pain decades ago and warn him before Buy-Up Gang reveals that every move he learned from Mujene was actually a way to protect his knees. He Zhang first thinks he might belong to a clan of healers who serve the Murim Masters, but quickly shakes that idea off as a disaster for a child who has rejected Shaolin training. So Baon agrees that instead of forcing him, he should befriend the boy to guide him back to the path. The master says there's no need to rush. After breakfast, a groaning Mujene bemoans his new task of studying Buddhist texts, only for Muil to point out that his face has turned purple, while the master then declares that since they've all mastered the chain-link fist, it's time to move on to the next step. Explaining that true martial arts power comes from balancing your mind and body, he begins building their inner strength before calling two disciples forward for a show. He tells everyone to copy Buy-Up and Buy-Up Gang by entering the lotus position, but Mujene has no idea what that means. But when he sees one of the disciples take a stance, he remembers that same pose. The master leads them to close their eyes and breathe deeply. He leads them to take a deep breath through their noses, pulling the air in until they feel it settle right at the center of their qi. Mujene is thrilled to finally learn the legendary Murim fighting style he's always dreamed of. Tired of the boring and wrong drills, he stands ready to finally start the real thing, while the new recruits bounce with excitement at learning the true martial arts. They question if they can ever learn to shatter a rock like Master He Zhang using the ancient Shaolin arts, so everyone concentrates on his voice while breathing in and out exactly as he teaches. Mujene realizes the training feels wrong because it doesn't match the breathing exercises he read about in novels. Doubting himself, he wonders where the lessons on yin-yang, the 5 elements, and the I Ching can be found. But he thinks they probably have good reasons for it. After grumbling about all that training, he finally did what he was told, simply because that was the reason. He is pushing his inner strength to the very limit, and his excitement has reached the highest peak. With the mighty power of inner strength, you could split mountains wide open and take to the skies. After all, the powerful inner strength tricks from those Murim stories are taught right here in Shaolin, and he was finally about to learn them. The master calls out to get everyone's attention and orders them to open their eyes. He explains that breathing in and out is like a meditation to feel and collect the life force you need to use your inner power. He tells them to use every spare moment to practice feeling the qi flowing through them. Realizing he only knows how to breathe and not how to build inner strength, Mujene needs to feel the qi, and then he spots someone picking up a book. As the veteran disciples hand out pamphlets showing the body's energy lines, one of them reaches out to Mujene. Master Yung tells them they don't need to memorize everything, but they must learn the main meridians so they can control qi and take down their opponents. Meridians are the special routes where qi travels inside your body, and you can't master martial arts without them. The master calls the apprentice forward and begins to show him where the meridians are located. Determined, Mujene flips through the booklet and decides to memorize every path the Qi flows through today. Starting the Shaolin journey to find inner peace means you must first learn the body's energy pathways and master the art of gathering your vital force. He questions if just memorizing the move is truly enough. When he sees Brother Biop Gang training, he stops and asks what he is doing. Laughing, Biop Gang says his knee hurts less thanks to the new training, so he's working out even harder now. Covering his ears, Mujene whispers, "I can hear your cartilage," reminding the boy that he taught him everything to help those knees heal, while Beep Gang shouts back that the strongest steel is forged in the hottest fire and flexes his 18 years of training, only for Mujene to shake his head and warn that if the fire gets too hot, the steel will melt just like their bodies, so he gently asks Beep Gang to sit down. Mujene tells him he's about to twist his Qi, warns that it will hurt, presses his knee against him, and asks if the pain is too much. Feeling pain in his tired knees sparks a memory in his mind. Thinking back, he remembers his days in the Special Forces. Every step took hard work. Even though his body was breaking, he kept training until he destroyed himself. Yet, despite his tireless efforts, he still couldn't keep his job. Finally, they let him go, and it was the darkest moment of his life. He stood still and watched the rain, realizing that this quiet, reflective moment was exactly how he must have looked back then. Mujene gently rubs his shoulders and warns him to look after his own body, telling him that if it falls apart, nobody will be there to help. Interrupting him, Bup Gang asks the boy if he's been too preachy, then assures him that no matter how much Mujene breaks down, Shaolin will never turn its back on any of its disciples. Mujene gives a tiny smile and stays quiet. Then Biop Gang apologizes for the delay and asks where the boy was headed, and the boy replies that he was going to practice the move they just learned. The man asks, "Haven't you practiced enough at home?" A doctor's son should know how the Qi flows, while Mujene fumbles for a reply, admitting that some things came up and that he never learned the flow of Qi. Bob Gang suggests practicing right away and points to the boy, saying that watching him might help Mujene find his Qi faster. Sitting down, he admits he doesn't know how to control his own power yet, but he's sure he'll figure out if he watches closely. The boy steps into place and declares, "I'm ready," while Bup Gang urges them to focus and Biop Gang kneels to watch closely, hoping the lesson will teach him something, as he takes a deep breath and Mujene watches with care. As the meditation goes on, the boy realizes the air itself has changed. This is Mujene's moment to finally see what makes things work differently. All of a sudden, he spots something he had never seen during his solo training. He frowned, wondering if that was the thing everyone had been whispering about. As Mujene looks at Beep Gang and asks if that's Thiki, she sits down to begin practicing her breathing. He tries to pull pure life energy from the world around him and guides it all into his own core. Focusing on his moves, stance, and mind's eye, he begins to pull in the Qi. At last, he senses the energy moving through him. He opened his eyes and realized he could finally feel the Qi. Yet one thing still leaves him wondering. He doubts his own tiny Qi, wondering why it's no bigger than a single grain of rice. So he feels happy about the little progress he made and wins his first mental fight. Biop Gang noticed the change and realized the boy was already feeling Qi, proving that Master Hij Zhang and the director were right. As Mujene keeps practicing, he gets used to the breathing but feels a strange cold chill and opens one eye. When he wakes up, he sees the Biop Gang standing there and is shocked to find it's already dark outside. He and Mule explain their late arrival with apologies, but the Biop Gang wave them off, telling them it was fine and urging them to head home. Mujene says goodbye with a thankful heart, leaving the Biop Gang amazed at the powerful energy he already holds. Biop Gang remarks that the training for the path of emptiness seems ready to begin, but Mujene wonders if one must memorize the meridians first. The man reminds the boy that he's a doctor's son and should know them, so the boy stumbles through an awkward agreement. As the storm ends, Biop Gang rushes him inside before it gets too late, while Mujene laments having to pretend to be from a doctor's family. The next day, the master calls out to everyone who has felt their Qi and memorized their meridians to come forward, and Mujene steps up, surprised to see he isn't alone and wondering what's going on. Seeing that others could control their Qi just as easily, the master declares they are ready for the next step, leaving Mujene confused because he had thought he was a genius. He holds up a book to show that it holds the key to the Buddhist path of emptiness, a core part of Shaolin teachings. As he flips through the book, he tells the new beginners he'll keep it simple and start with the basics. He begins his explanation, leaving the beginners wide-eyed and amazed. The other disciples cheered, amazed that they could feel the energy and master their meridians in just a single day. Then Mujene and her friends head back from their training. Will asked how he could do all that in just one day, And Mujene explained it was easy because it was the beginner level, teaching him to first breathe in Qi and move it through his body while caring for his meridians, reminding the boy to focus on his breathing since understanding would come soon. Mujene pours all his effort into memorizing the meridians and their order until they are burned into his mind, marking his first big step toward becoming a Shaolin master. As he meditates, he feels his Qi building up quickly, celebrating even the smallest gains. Feeling cheered up, he realizes he's finally training his inner strength just like in the old novels he loved, feeling his progress as he practices Qi meditation until someone calls out to him. He spun around and asked Mule where he had been. Then he spots his friend hauling another monk and asks if he is a corpse, only to be corrected by Mule, who says it is actually Mug Yong. And when Mujene asks if Mug Yong is dead, his friend reassures him that the older brother is still alive, just unconscious and too heavy to lift after they try to wake him. Mujene asks for a second and rushes to the fallen monk, then crouches down to study him. When he took a closer look, he saw the marks on the body weren't from being dragged, and that's when it suddenly became clear what really happened. He turned to Mule and said, "Someone beat that man up," pointing out that the monk had been kicked and is hurt all over, to which his friend agreed. But then he wonders why that name feels so familiar, and he remembers seeing a young monk who, unlike the others, always looked thin and discouraged. Until now, he'd only caught glimpses of Mug Yong, but now he was trying to recall something else. That name sounded familiar, but it didn't ring a bell for any face. Deciding to move on for now, he asks why Mug Yong took such a beating, and Mule agrees it's a good question while Mujene wonders if anyone knows the reason, so he replies that they can find out. "I got a pretty good guess about what really went down." Mujene grinned and said, "I know exactly who to ask." He explained that since the guy arrived before us, we should ask someone who was here even earlier. He talks about the man he fought, and Will knows exactly who he means. Mug Yong turned around and asked, "What do you want?" "I don't think it will happen, because it seems very unlikely that Mug Yong could beat the rookie." He says it would even be a relief if that crybaby had the courage to do it, but Mujene points out that Mug Yong is the oldest rookie and knows what life was like before they showed up. Walking through the courtyard, the two keep moving as Muil carries the unconscious boy on his shoulders. Out of nowhere, Mug Yong pops up right in front of them and asks what's going on. As Muil slips and loses his grip, the young man tumbles down to the ground. The other monks stand in silence as one looks on in shock, asking, "Did you just kill him?" Mug Yong questions them, wondering why they bother him while he is in the middle of his precious training. Mujene scolds the guy for acting like a kid and tells him to step up like an older brother, but the other guy snaps back that Mujene should be the junior showing respect, only for the boy to remind him that he's already beaten him before, leading Mug Yong to claim he was caught off guard while Mul calls him a brat, and Mug Yong lunges in to punch him. Mujene twists away with a quick dodge, then spins around to lock him up from behind. He holds his opponent down while Mayo sighs, wondering why Brother Mug Yong lost once more. With his opponent pinned down, Mujene leans in and declares, "You will never defeat me." Do you know why? Tightening his grip, he challenges, "Let's begin," while Mug Yong struggles beneath him. So he makes an offer. If you tell him what happened to Mug Yong, he promises to finally explain why he keeps losing. With a quick twist, Mug Yong breaks free from Mujene's hold, earning a sharp remark about his annoyed mood as he still fumes over the loss. He goes on to say that for a proud man like Mug Yong, losing in such a way must be tearing him up from the inside out. Mug Yong stops and turns as Mujene insists that he explain what happened to Mug Yong first. Revealing the truth, he explains that Mug Yong was beaten by Mwai and his gang, while the only son of the CO clan protects the Shiola merchants, and a flashback shows Muyong standing beside his father, a servant of that clan. Master Heeman spotted Mwai's hidden talent and welcomed him as his new disciple. But Mwai hated the thought of a servant's boy being his equal, so he started bullying him, and things got even messier because Mugong's dad still worked for Mwai's dad. Because of this, the boy can't just tell the big bosses about Mwai. Mug Yong grits his teeth and says he might understand if it were a normal school, but he points at Mujene and shouts that this is Shaolin, so he demands to know why the experienced student isn't doing anything while asking what he can possibly do. Mujene argues back, saying you're the strongest and should protect him, even though Mug Yong insists there are 3 opponents, because Mule knows you're the temple's greatest fighter. Feeling embarrassed, Mug Yong admits that maybe people think others don't train hard, which leaves Mujene wondering. Then he realizes those men belong to the Shaolin sect. Explaining that the disciples from these clans already know the basics of martial arts and don't push themselves as hard, Mujene realizes they are more advanced than the other rookies. Suddenly, everyone stops and turns around as they realize Mug Yong is starting to wake up. The boy sits on the ground, looking confused and asking, "Where am I?" before touching his own head as if he still doesn't know where he is. When the 3 monks appear, he shrinks back in fear and crawls backward until Mujene raises his hands to reassure him, admitting that Magong explained the boy's trauma and bullying, which makes him worry that even asking Master Heejong might cause trouble for Mugyeong's father. With a determined look, he insists there must be a way to help, then approaches Mugyeong with a plan, only to be met with the boy's doubt about his true intentions until he reveals their solution, reporting the bullies to Master Heejong, which immediately makes Mugyeong suspicious and worried about what might happen to his father. Mujene reassures him, saying that becoming a true Shaolin disciple is all that's needed, and explains that this means officially joining the main order. Mugyeong finally gets it. Since most clan disciples are outsiders, they can't mess with an official order disciple, just like Mujene is telling him. Realizing this too, Magong grasps the true purpose behind the plan. But Mu is still puzzled and doesn't get what the offer means. Clarifying things, Mujene explains that a true disciple or his father can never be harmed by a clan disciple, even though he admits the plan might fail. Remembering Beop Gang's words that Shaolin never turns its back on its own, he decides to test this truth by reaching out to Mugyeong and declaring that not only Master Heejong, but all of Shaolin would not allow such injustice, while Mujene and the others wait in front of them for the boy's choice, with Mujene encouraging him to speak up and asking if he fears failing to become a true disciple, leaving Mugyeong hesitant and stuttering as he gazes at the outstretched hand. Mujene questions the boy again, asking how he treats him and if he wants his father to keep working for a family like that. He warns that if he does nothing, his father will end up working for Mwai, and he asks if he can live with that. Mugyeong grips Mujene's hand tightly and promises to do whatever is needed. Mujene helps him stand up and says it was the right call, then turns to the group to announce that it's time for the next part of their plan. Worried that he can't take another beating before becoming a disciple, Mugyeong fears he'll break, but Mujene calmly tells him there are no secrets to hide. 3 days later, as the afternoon sun warmed the courtyard, a group of monks came together to rest. One of Mute's companions questions if Mugyeong will really show up, but Mwai confirms that he forced the man to come by threatening to send a message to his home if he didn't. Muhi and Muen, talking to their lackey, said they were itching for a fight. They say 2 days feels like a lifetime for someone who is used to being beaten and asked to do it every single day. One of them wonders if they've noticed Mugyeong hanging out with weird folks like Mujene and Mui lately, and the other nods that even the proud Magong was with them, meaning they'll have plenty of people to practice beating up. Mute sneered and said, "Lucky," claiming he was ready to beat up that boy, Mujene. They all agree that he is always complaining about something, and they also confess they've never liked Mugong's face. Thinking back to when they saw him cry, one of them swears they'll make him cry again. Nearby, Mujene tells Magong that someone really doesn't like his face, which is why everyone always stares at him. The group marched forward to face the bullies, and after Mujene mocked them for not running, a bully taunted Mujene, saying he must feel good, so Mujene beat that fool and nudged Magong to respond, leading Magong to order one of them to step up for good, while Muil offered to fight one, and Magong and Mujene agreed to take the remaining 2. But Mujene turns and says Mwai is pure Magong, and Magong hesitates before agreeing. He asks if he remembers what he taught him, says he'll be okay, but Mugyeong still doubts he can actually win. Mwai walks up slowly and says that Mugyeong has made a few friends. He says he is so jealous that the two groups stare each other down, with Mute calling him a crybaby and Mujene promising to teach him his place. Mute steps up close and asks what you plan to do next. Then he wonders if he'll just stand there or finally fight back, but as Magong trembles and admits he can't do it, Mute warns him of the consequences of attacking. He threatens, "I know what will happen to your father," and suddenly, the memory of his dad forms clearly in his mind. Remembering Mujene's words, he knows that the only path to freedom is to teach them a lesson and become a true Shaolin disciple. Tears welling in his eyes, he cries out, "Don't you dare!" as he steps forward to shout, "Don't you dare hurt my father!" Startled by the threat, Mui responds with a quick counterattack. Just as Mui throws a punch, Mul steps in and stops it right there. Mui admits he's not just a fool, but then Magong surprises him by gripping Muen's fist with surprising strength. Seeing the change, he realizes his opponent isn't just stronger, but actually different. It feels like everything in Mong has turned upside down. Looking back, he remembers the time he chose not to help. Mujene asked his older brother if he was scared and said that since Magong agreed to help, they could stop talking, but Magong cut him off, insisted on an answer, and reminded him that the real question was why he always loses. Mujene explains that his chain fist is fast and strong, but that is all it really is. He gets into a fighting stance and taunts him to dodge the attack. He lunges with a punch, but Magong dodges, earning a congratulation before being told to dodge again for the next move. He lets out a shout and readies his strike, while Magong focuses all her energy to dodge the hit. Instead of throwing a punch, he sweeps his leg with a low kick. Magong rolls on the ground and admits he lied, But Mujene reminds him that no opponent will just let him get close enough to strike. He then says that you must trick your enemy to win. Mujene admits his strikes are fast and strong, but his body gives away his moves, so Magong says he just needs to hit harder and faster, so nobody can dodge. Mujene half agrees, admitting his words wouldn't be wrong if he were the strongest man in the world, but since he isn't, they fall short. He uses a character from the fall of the Sinister faction as an example, noting that this warrior was so incredibly powerful with an unbeatable technique that even expecting a fight wouldn't be enough to defend against it. Until he's the absolute best in the world, that rule doesn't even apply to him. He suggests learning some tricks, like fooling your opponent in a game of rock, paper, scissors. Magong grabs Muin's fist and growls, "Is that all you've got?" Then he shouts that he's about to strike him. He promises to unleash his chained fist in its first form and dares his opponent to dodge. Magong looks back on his past, admitting that he used to think trickery was cheating, but now he finally agrees with Mujene that a little deception is necessary. So he offers to teach him something in return, and Mujene asks what it could be. Magong warns him that Mwai and his friends won't be as easy to beat as he was. Confused, Mujene couldn't grasp Mugong's words, who simply told him he hadn't fought with all his strength back then. He explains that in a real fight, rivals will use their clan styles and inner strength to push everyone deeper into the secluded parts of the temple. He says this spot will work, but he explains that he didn't want any grown-ups watching him use his clan style. He asks Mule to keep watch while he plans a surprise, and Mujene urges him to show off his unique style, with Magong hoping this move will finally win him respect. Focusing with all his might, he starts showing off his special way of doing it. He screams and throws all his might into the move. Mujene watches closely and sees that this move feels completely different from just using his chained fist with raw power and speed. He realizes the power isn't quite what he thought, yet it's still amazing for a man of Mugong's age. He gets it now. He was right to warn that they're too powerful to underestimate, because every blow they land makes the air crackle with danger. Knowing the fight is coming, he realizes Mwai and his gang will go all out with every martial arts trick they know. Magong suddenly halts his forward rush just inches from Mule, proving he's in full control. Questioning everything, he asks about the power, and Mujene replies that it's incredible, confirming that he is the strongest child there, but he notes that Magong still can't fully control his inner strength. Mujene quickly shakes off his doubts, deciding that the fight is under control now. He gets ready and steps into a stance to face the opponent's attack. As the lackey charges forward with a warning cry, Mujene watches him close and realizes that inner strength must follow set forms, noting that the opponent's mighty punch looks as weak as a baby's when compared to Magong. Just as we knew he would, he slips past the hit with no trouble at all. Realizing the chained fist attack will be too obvious, Mujene dodges just in time, leaving the shocked lackey staring at the empty air where the blow should have landed. Realizing this, he knows Mujene didn't win by luck and pulls back to retreat. Mujene dashes toward the man and unleashes a flurry of strikes while asking if it's his turn to attack, but the lackey lifts his arms to shield his face. As soon as Mujene spots the guard, he jokes, "Are you only protecting your face?" before punching his stomach, while Mui throws a strike at Muil that the other dodges by tripping him, bringing back the memory of their last battle. Mujene watches every move while Magong winds up a mighty punch to strike Muin. As the fist slams into the ground, it triggers a massive explosion. Muin lies on the ground, unable to rise, while Mute watches in total shock. Then he begins to wonder if he has become the villain, watching his fallen enemy act that way after intimidating Mug Yong for so long. He spins around to check on his friends. Magong and Muil have already won their fights, casually noting they didn't even need to worry because the real battle had barely started. Hearing a strange noise, Mujene asks how Mug Yong is doing even though Mug Yong seems fine. Hearing a scary noise, he wonders what it is before seeing Mug Yong keep hitting Mwai on the ground. He runs toward them, shouting, "Stop. It's over." And that sight suddenly brings a memory rushing back into his mind. Once he figured out the reason, he finally knew why that name felt so familiar to him. The picture of a boy slamming his rival's face into the dirt, with a wild look in his eyes and blood on his face, keeps popping into his mind. Mujene knew without a shadow of a doubt that it was truly him. He remembers the book's worst character, the villain who can't get enough of blood. He realizes with a start that this is Mug Yong, the Blood Monk. Mujene couldn't remember most of his favorite childhood book, but one picture stayed burned into his mind like a memory he couldn't erase. The picture revealed a bloodied monk screaming that only his own blood could wash away humanity's evil. The sight before him felt just like the terrifying monster from the story, and he couldn't help but wonder what he had done, realizing that his only wish to make the boy feel better had ended up turning him into that same nightmare. Seeing the danger, he knew he had to stop him or Mui would really die. Running, He asked Mule to help hold the fighter down, while Mug Yong screamed for them to let go, because Mwai would chase his father. After stopping and panting, the group stared at Mute's bloody, unconscious form, and Mujene realized just how close they came to disaster. Mug Yong knelt on the ground and let his tears fall. Mujene understood the situation and realized he wasn't the bloody monk yet. The character in the book was shown only as a madman, with no story ever told about how he lost his mind. He must have taken so much bullying that on one day, he finally lost it. Suddenly, the BUP gang showed up in the hallway and asked what was going on. Mujene and Wheel spun around to see their fate was sealed. As he got closer, Beipang shouted for them to explain right away. Pointing at the boys lying on the ground, he shouted at Mujene, "What the hell is going on?" Then turned to Mug Yong with the same question, but the boy just hesitated. Mujene shouted the names of the people in front of him. "Didn't you just tell us to explain ourselves?" BUP gang wrote down the names of all 4 boys. Mujene flipped Mug Yong onto his back so the Inquisitor could see him. Surprised by the sudden move, Baiup gang asked what was happening, but Mujene only asked him to look at Mugyong's bruised back, leaving Baiup gang wondering what could have caused such marks. He looked grave and demanded to know what happened, and Mujene explained that the bruises were scars from 2 months of beatings Mug Yong had taken. He explained that they stepped in because they had been summoned to beat him again that very day. Baiup gang questioned the news, then turned to ask his others if it was true before ordering Mui and Muin to stand up. Other monks ran to the scene, shouting questions as they heard the screams. Shaking like leaves in the wind, the 2 boys stood frozen and unable to speak. Watching the scene, one of the new arrivals stared down at Mu's unconscious form. Then he shouted, "What the hell is going on here?" and turned to Mug Yong to hear his side of the story. The boy froze and started shaking because he didn't know what to say. Mujene placed a gentle hand on the man's shoulder, urging him to speak the truth, assuring him that Brother Bop gang would treat him fairly and telling him not to fear. Mug Yong nodded in agreement and began to recount how Mui, and Muin had beaten him for 2 months, until the man's voice trembled with tears as he shared every painful thing he had endured. While other monks watched the scene, Mujene and Muil waited for Beep Gang to respond. Even though Mug Yong was shaking with agitation, he managed to tell the Inquisitor exactly what was happening. Mujene remembered Shaolin's promise never to leave a disciple behind, and felt it was his duty to watch over him. But Beep Gang argued that those children were also Shaolin disciples. So the boy questioned if using threats to terrorize others truly made them disciples, and if that matched the real spirit of Shaolin, which Beep Gang agreed with, while Hyang-sung arrived to say they would investigate, but only if the story was true, as the Arhood Hall director said such children would no longer be accepted. And Mujene confidently believed the investigation would be fair, though Hyang-sung was interrupted by pointing out Mu's unconscious body on the ground and questioning who would dare go against mere children when martial arts is meant to subdue the opponent, leading Mug Yong to kneel, apologize, and take the blame for everything. Mujene stepped forward and said, "It was all my fault, letting my anger carry me away over what they did to Mug Yong." He was stopped by Mugyong's plea for him to take the blame, only for Mujene to step forward and admit that everything started because of him, realizing that betraying Mug Yong now could lead to a bloody fate, but standing with him could make him the best ally for everyone. Bub Gang explains that this is the spot where they practice Buddhist meditation. He tells Mujene he must stay silent for 7 days as part of the practice. He points to a dark cave and tells us the boy will finish his punishment there. He is guided to sit upright, facing the wall, told to meditate without ever turning outward even for food or sleep. And so Mujene agrees and steps into the cave to begin. He used to think Jiang's stories happened in his own world, but now a character from a different tale has stepped right into his story. He already knew that the demonic masters return and the sinister factions fall happened in the same world. 2 heroes from the same time lived in different places and rarely met. But halfway through the book, a new monk from the fresh Shaolin arrives, making him realize his choices ripple out to other stories. So he starts questioning if he set off a butterfly effect or messed up the paths of other characters. To grow stronger, he needs allies, but after more than 10 years, he only remembers them from when they were young. And while he knows the big picture, the details have faded, leaving him to wonder if the new Shaolin legend can still happen if everything mixes together. So he stays close to Mug Yong, the future blood monk, just to watch what happens next. The protagonist only finds his true power and awakens after he stands face to face with the blood monk. But killing the blood monk now could doom the other heroes to forever wander without wisdom, leaving Mujene lost in a tangled mess of choices while Biop Gang watches him from the shadows. Watching the boy endure his punishment with no distractions, he couldn't believe that a 12-year-old could focus so hard. With his special tricks and proven skill, he knows the boy is truly special. Just moments before, Headmaster High Moon sighed in another place, admitting he couldn't live up to his own beliefs while his friend Hij Zhang stepped up to take the blame for losing control. Haiyan shifts the topic and asks the disciple what he found, and Hij Zhang reports that after questioning all the novices, their stories matched up perfectly, proving that Ma Gong was bullied all along. This could stain the Shaolin Orde's honor and turn the air around Arid Hall into a bleak and heavy place. Next, Biap Gang steps forward to announce himself as a second-generation disciple and gets the go-ahead to enter, after which Haiyan Song wonders aloud if Haiyan noticed the newcomer's hands, only for the master cook to confirm that he saw them too. Glancing at Mugyong's hands and face was all it took to know he was the one who hurt Mwai. Commenting that Haiyan called this a blessing in disguise that could make up for everything and that life might have been worse without Mujene, the three men stood in silence for a moment before Bai Gang asked the master for permission to speak, which was gladly given. Nodding in agreement, he says, "It's not about who is to blame since we are all guilty. Instead of complaining, let's make sure this never happens again." And when the headmaster asks if he has a plan, he listens for his idea. Bob Gang humbly suggests that to stop the bullying, we must train the energetic kids until they're too tired to cause trouble. Beep Gang asks for the green light to start his plan, and Haiyan nods in agreement before stepping away to handle other matters for the next few days, promising that the three guilty kids will face their punishment and that he'll visit the discipline hall first. Biup Gang returns to the cave and pledges to care for the children, only to be amazed when he sees that Mujene hasn't moved in nearly an hour and a half. Bei Gang almost steps inside, but he stops himself, instead telling Mujene to keep meditating while he goes to check on his water and food supplies first thing in the morning. The young monk kept quiet and stayed deep inside the cave. Mujene whispered to himself, "The man is finally gone," relying on 7 years of special forces training to sense the mountain air had finally cleared. He dives to the floor and wonders how he'll survive 7 days with no protein to eat. Reclining on the floor, he wonders how long it's been since he last tasted meat. He remembers the fried chicken he just ate, still feeling the crunch of its crispy batter and the juice of its tender meat. As his hunger grows stronger, all he can think about is finding some meat to eat. Staring up at the cave ceiling, he wonders where to find food, then turns toward the entrance and realizes all he needs to do is go hunt. Nearby, a girl dashes through the woods, and a white rabbit bolts away from her. The animal leaps toward the rope trap while the little girl watches from her hiding spot. Crouched low in the thick plants, the girl watches the scene unfold. Just as the rabbit was falling, Mujene suddenly appeared, caught it in midair, shouted that he'd found protein, and then cheered about the meat he had just secured. While the girl watches quietly from the bushes, other things are happening in the nearby city of Yichuan, where a group of Shaolin disciples are busy gathering clues. They ask the neighbors for help, and in doing so, they finally learn what has been going on in the area. Eventually, they reach the gates of the SEO merchant protectors and are welcomed inside. Higo Shaolin, the head of external affairs, leads the group by walking right at the front. Without wasting time, a man introduces himself, welcomes them, and invites them inside. Standing up and speaking with respect, he introduces himself as Murim Wuxia, the head of the group and Mwai's father, saying it is an honor to meet the grandmaster of the 5 unmatched fists. Behind the monks, Mwai cowers and shakes, while Murim Wuxia glares with anger, demanding to know why his son is in such a state and forcing an answer. Higgle then steps forward to speak directly to Munpang Wuxia, the leader of the Wuxia merchant protectors. He says Mute is in this mess because his own evil ways made him bully a co-worker instead of training his mind and body. Munpang Wuxia reacts with anger and tries to speak up, but the monk keeps going, saying that the investigation revealed even more. The so-called merchant protectors are actually just bandits who steal money from everyone. Declaring disbelief, Hegel says he simply cannot believe that a Shaolin clan would get involved in such wickedness. He commands his followers to shut the door and take away those men's strength. Murim Wuxia shouts to his men to stop the monks right away and steps forward to strike the man with a series of fast hits. With one final, direct punch to the opponent's chest, he ends it all. Standing tall over the fallen men, the monk sees that they have lost their powers. He demands they make things right and hand back the stolen wealth to the people. Standing face to face, the beaten men see their mess is a total disaster, and they have no idea what to do next. Hegel steps up to the crowd and asks if Jian Bang is there. An older man steps forward, introduces himself as Jian Bang, and asks how he can help. Upon realizing who he was, he shouted, "You're from the temple." And then, with humble apology, Hagel confessed that the child Mwai had hurt was actually his own son, Mugyong. With a heavy voice, the man asks if his son was bullied and declares that no apology can fix what happened, while Mujene pauses in the forest to think. Spotting a flimsy trap on the ground that looks like a bad copy of his own from yesterday, he starts to wonder who built it and if there are others hiding in the mountains trying to imitate him. Suddenly, the young monk hears a noise from the bushes, spins around to face the stranger through the leaves, and they both freeze in place. Suddenly, the girl springs up and bolts away, but Mujene yells, "I saw you," as she frantically pleads for him to follow. As she runs away, she wonders if she truly managed to lose him. Mujene reaches out and finally grabs her. As they tumble down together, they roll into the thick bushes. Realizing what happened, he sees he's landed on a girl, and after she apologizes for the accident, he stands up and says sorry too. Later, the girl ate a piece of roasted meat, and he told her she must have been hungry since she was trying to catch a rabbit to eat as well. Sitting by the fire, she asks if monks can eat meat, to which Mujene vaguely replies that it depends and tells her not to worry, before asking how she ended up in the mountains since it is Shaolin Temple land. She kept her head low and said nothing. She remembers pleading with her father not to go. In another memory, she asks herself, "Why do people hate me? Is it my fault just for being here?" Seeing how delicate the subject was, Mujene quickly steered the conversation elsewhere. He asks her to keep his secret of hunting and eating rabbits. The girl asks, is it because monks shouldn't eat meat? But he just says he has his reasons. In return, he promises to help her get home, leaving her amazed as he explains that a shirtless monk with some power will soon pass by, and she can ask him for help. Mujene tells the girl to wait in front of the cave while he senses Bup Gang's approach, and when she asks how he knows, he simply says he can feel it. The girl walks up to the man and asks him for help. He is shocked to see her and asks what an outsider is doing there. And after she says she got separated from her group, Bup Gang agrees to help her go home, but then he suddenly stares at her with a serious look. Pointing to the dark cave, he asks if anyone saw a little boy, but Mujene shivers inside as the girl admits she's too scared to go near it and hasn't seen anything enter or leave, so Bup Gang concludes that Mujene must be meditating and decides to come back later. He invites her to walk down the mountain with him so he can take her home, and she happily accepts his kind offer. As they walk and talk, he asks for her name, and she tells him it is Sayolaru, so Mujene's ear twitches inside the cave to confirm the man is finally gone. Lying on the ground, he admits he is too tired to remember the little girl's name, and in the end, decides that her name doesn't matter. Meanwhile, Mugyeong steps up to welcome Bup Gang and offers to help if they need anything. The man replies, "I must tell you something about your father," revealing that Bei Gang had warned Mugyeong that the co-trade merchant protectors, run by his tormentor's dad, had been shut down. He also told him that the Shaolin had found another job for his dad elsewhere. Afterward, he told the boy to stop worrying about the world outside and instead focus on becoming a true follower. Mugyeong locked eyes with the older man, his heart full of resolve. The young monk gave his word that he would try his hardest and swear to do anything necessary to become a true disciple. By the fourth day, Mujene's Special Forces survival training had taught him how to hunt for food. He remembered cooking for the young girl over the campfire, a risky mistake that could have gotten him caught. After that day, he shifted his operations to a nearby cave and always cleaned up completely so that no trace of his visits would remain. To make sure no one noticed, he would hide animals inside covered clay pits and cook them until they were ready to eat. That was the first real meat he'd eaten since getting to the temple, and it gave him plenty of protein. Mujene wakes up before the morning bell and sits facing the wall to meditate, but only because he sensed someone coming into the cave. When the gang reaches the cave, they're amazed to find Mujene already awake and meditating. He walks in, unsure if the boy stayed up all night to make things right. He then sets down a bamboo container and a pouch of rations, amazed that Mujene kept his deep meditation going even with him standing right there. After leaving the water and food on the ground, the Bup Gang moves on. Once the man walks away, Mujene glances around to make sure he's truly alone. He grabs the food supplies, convinced that expecting kids to survive on them for a week is way too far to go. They only give him water and a daily ration of med food, but he hunts to get the rest he needs, and he's already grown used to this life. On the sixth morning in the forest, he does whatever exercises he can inside the cave to warm up, following the rule to use his protein and energy right away. As he kept going, he spotted something that mattered. As he worked out, his breath came in and out just like the special breathing trick he had learned. To test it, he started mixing his void training with gymnastics moves to make something all his own. Mujene could feel the training working on his body, though he wouldn't understand the full truth until later, as he was unknowingly practicing a special kind of fluid cultivation. On the seventh day, Bup Gang shouts that the meditation is done and you can finally stand up. Mujene asks if he can speak again, and the man gives him a nod to say yes. He then warns that morning training starts soon and tells him to head back to the training grounds. As they walk, Mujene asks how things turn out with Mugyeong. Buy Up Gang told us they dug into Mwi's clan and found out that the merchant protectors were actually corrupt. As a result, the clan was broken up, their fighting skills were taken away, Mugyeong's father got a new job elsewhere, and Mujene was told that since the last week's training was so tough, he had to follow the same strict Shaolin methods as the other kids to be fair. He suggests raising his own training level while staying true to his own style, but the Bayop gang just replies, "We shall see." And when they reach the Arhat Hall training ground, Will rushes to greet him, explaining that things have been very difficult for everyone. Mugyeong admits he nearly quit, but Mugong laughs and says it felt like a piece of cake to him. Then the young monk turns to his friends. Master Hia Zhang shouts that morning training starts right now and commands everyone to line up. A disciple tosses a bag onto the ground, leaving Mujene curious about its contents while the boys quickly identify them as sandbags and start strapping them to their bodies. The master barked for them to grab their bags and get back to their spots, leaving Mujene to wonder if that trick was just to make the training harder. Besides Mujene coming back, it was just the usual morning workout. As the traditional training grew tougher, the kids ended up soaked in sweat. Mujene lifted the sandbags like weights and kept training himself. The sandbags are lopsided and your hold is slipping. He wasn't trying to become a bodybuilder, so the workout was just right for him. Two disciples watched in silence as Mujene acted like nothing had changed, doing everything exactly his own way. The Bop Gang strides toward Mujene, and the other boys think he's finally going to get his comeuppance. As Bop Gang gets closer, he tells the boy that the training is getting tougher. He sees that Mujene is pushing himself way harder than anyone else. Then Bayop Gang senses a heavy energy coming from the young monk and realizes it is fluid cultivation. Only after you get used to gathering energy while moving can you unlock fluid cultivation, letting you break your own body's limits to do crazy things like smash a rock with your bare hands. It also lets you soar through the sky at breakneck speed and master many other amazing moves. Something catches their eye, and Mujene remarks that he's already bored of just using his own body, so he's glad they brought out the weights. Next, he lifts the heavy sandbags to work his arms. While his fellow disciples struggled with their training, Mujene was the only one using sandbags for weightlifting, and as he felt his muscles grow, he was filled with satisfaction. The other boys looked on in fear, staring at him and wondering what had gone wrong. But Bayop Gang saw something more in Mujene, so he watched the scene unfold with great care. The man realizes this is fluid cultivation and can't help but wonder how the boy picked it up so quickly. Bayop Gang steps up and asks to have a word. He sits down and asks Mujene to follow him, and Master Hijung nods to confirm that Bayop Gang was right. He sees the skill is fluid cultivation and wonders just how long Mujene has been using it. The boy recalls mastering the skill while trapped in the cave, yet he knows he can't tell anyone he broke his punishment. So he decides to lie and says it was his very first time. He weaves a tale of his clan's breathing secrets and the thrill of getting fit once more. He told us he just mixed his clan's way with the breath in and breath out trick, and that's how it happened. The explanation left the two men totally stunned. Haijung realized that you can't master the flow until you first learn how to move the void. The Bop Gang warns that while a few lucky disciples can master fluid cultivation in just a few years, most are better off spending their time building a strong foundation in the void before learning other mental skills to control their qi. But if someone mastered the mysterious path of the void and fluid arts in just a few days, like Mujene, their inner energy would surge forward at a speed no one else could match. Hijong can't help but wonder how fast the boy will grow to master deeper mental powers if he learns to control his energy so easily. After steeling himself, the master asks Mujene if fluid cultivation is available whenever he wants, and upon learning it's only for clan techniques, the young monk is given permission to resume his training. He dashes back to the training yard. The masters say they got all worked up for nothing. Mujene looked at Mugyeong and asked if they should keep going. He walks over to ask if they're practicing the four-limb stretch, and Mule says yes, noting that Mui taught them because they seemed interested, while Mugong adds that Mule is a great teacher and that the pain actually feels better now. Mujene recalls showing Mule how to stretch, and he's shocked at just how fast the boy figured it out. He barely noticed Mu since he wasn't in Jiang's books, but he spotted something strange about Mu's fighting style. It was both powerful and easy, which made him wonder if Mu never became a master because he didn't even know his own meridians, so Mujene turned to Mugong to figure it out later. He then turns to the boy to ask how Muil has been teaching him, eager to see what he has learned. Mugong tries to count the moves as others cheer him on. As they finish their military warm-up, one soldier grimaces and asks if feeling so much pain on his side is normal, so Mujene steps in to fix their forms, telling Mugong to relax his fists and Mugyeong to stretch his arm. Then, he shouts that the next move is to take a breath. The boys stand in a row and count along as they breathe. Ma Gong chuckles, saying everyone is doing great and it's easy work. Then he looks at Muil and thinks back to the time the boys spent with Mujene. He showed off amazing flexibility that truly shocked the other monks with his skill. Mujene thinks about Muil, the boy who pulled him out of the race to become a real disciple. He watches Muil, who is talented but lacks common sense. He then recalls Mug Yong, the one who gave Mwai a beating. Ma Gong decides that while everyone seems amazing, he will easily keep up with them, while Mujene lifts fresh sandbags during his morning workout. When he's off the clock, he spends time training his inner strength. He also guides the other monks through stretching routines, making sure they keep their back straight. Two monks whisper to each other, with one wondering if the other noticed something strange about Mujene. One wonders if the boy's shoulders have grown wider, but his friend cannot say for sure. They wondered if his strange workouts were causing it, until the 10th day finally arrived. Master Hij Jang tells the new students that it is time to start training their inner energy. He then calls a disciple to step up and show the exercise. He starts explaining the first form, showing how to pull the inner power from the Qi center. He then tells the energy to split and rush toward the shoulders and collarbone. Mujene focuses hard, pulls energy into his center, lifts it up, and splits it into 7 parts for himself and 3 for the enemy. The boy gets ready with his chain-link fist pose and quickly throws the first move. Mujene wonders what strange feeling is coming through his hand. He feels a powerful strength growing inside him, strengthening every part of his body, so he knows why he must keep his energy balanced instead of pouring it all into one side. Then he understands why it makes sense to share that energy with the rest of his body. Master Haijong says the technique works only when energy flows through the lower body, which Mujene agrees with, but this sparks a new thought in his mind that the power must move through the whole body, not just the arms. He watched his own arm closely, realizing the method was far more tricky than it first looked. He then wonders just how much training it would take to use all this power in a real fight. For now, he quietly watches the other monks as they try to practice. Muil shuffles awkwardly and asks if he's doing it right. Mujene walks over and gently asks his friend to just hold on for a second. He asks Muil what she's doing, and the boy admits he can't remember the order. The young monk mixes up the order of the meridians, but he's quickly corrected and learns the right way to go. He messes up the energy direction once again, so Mujene corrects him by reminding him that he is right-handed, and finally Muil remembers what was said while Mujene watches him in silence. He tells the boy to stop worrying about the names of the meridians and simply focus on gathering his inner strength right in his belly. After that, Mujene tells him to shift the energy to a new spot and then to his shoulder, and Mu succeeds with the move, cheering that it feels much easier now. Mujene tells him to keep asking if he gets confused again, just in case he starts forgetting things. Instantly, the young monk stumbles awkwardly and eagerly asks where that power needs to go. Mujene then realizes his friend has the short, forgetful memory of a goldfish. Master H. Jang and his second-generation disciples each practiced a unique basic move every single day. After that, they kept working with each child, giving every kid the help they needed. This training kept going for 70 days straight, all the way up to now. One by one, every young monk, including Mujene, mastered the 10 basic moves of the chain-link fist. Ma Gong tells the boy doing push-ups that 20 seconds are already gone. The boy stands up from the floor. Mujene spins around and asks if they should do some squats. As the morning training gets underway, the Bai gang watches as everyone gives it their all. Suddenly, he wonders who is breathing so loudly. His eyes land on a small group of monks lifting heavy sandbags with their legs. Suddenly, he is shocked to see how many sandbags Mujene is lifting. That little boy is as strong as an ox for his size. He was built far stronger than any other beginner. Bup gang stares in wonder, realizing the boy did all this in just 2 months, and he wonders if Mujene was right when she told him to train hard. Sitting all by himself, he wonders if the way the Shaolin monks train is truly right. Master Hyeonsong walks over and asks why Bup gang is still standing there, and the training is over, but Bup gang sees that something is troubling his master. Hyunong tells him to unload his worries to make them feel lighter, so he presses for the truth, only for B-Top gang to admit that his heavy heart comes from not understanding Mujene. Bayop gang tells Mujene that Master Hyeonsong wants to see him, while other monks immediately question what trouble he's caused this time and tell him to apologize. Then the Bayop gang urges him on, saying the master is waiting, and Mujene follows along. Already inside the room, Mujene wonders if he accidentally did something he didn't even notice. He then wonders what Hyeonsong, the master of Arhat Hall, could possibly want from him. Hyeonsong watched in wonder as Mujene transformed in such a short time, feeling the boy's bright spirit and hidden strength, yet he couldn't shake the worry in Beipang's voice. The master commands Beop Gang to call for Mujene, while Yinsong explains that this matter is too big for just the two of them to handle alone. It would be much better to meet Mujene face to face and talk the matter over with him directly. Mujene steps in front of the master, who is sitting at the table. The man stares and wonders what is going on. Mujene can't understand why he's just being stared at in silence instead of getting his training done. He's certain the master isn't just looking at him, but sizing him up from head to toe. The boy feels like everyone is looking at him and judging every little thing he does. Then he flexed his muscles and told Haiyanong, "I'm not in my best shape for a competition yet." So when Haiyanong asked what he was doing, Mujene said he was just posing, and the master mentioned that it had been a while since they last talked, which the boy agreed on since they hadn't spoken since the incident. Mujene recalls the fight and wonders if the summons is connected, but Haiyansong sips his tea and says no, he just needed to see it with his own eyes, and now that he has, he's sure of something. So Mujene asks what he knows. The master notes that he's grown much faster than the other rookies and that the rumors about his strength are true, but he also asks if that's really why he called him or if his clan's training is the secret behind his rapid rise. The boy says this trouble is just the start, and before long, they will make him train the Shaolin way. Mujene challenges the master to prove his training is truly superior to Shaolin, only for the master to shake his head and say no. Then Haiyanong reveals that Shaolin isn't as rigid as people think and offers to suggest a plan. The young monk recalls Master Haizhong's loud shouts about training and asks what the master had planned. The master explains that Shaolin survived 1,000 years by adapting, but Mujene says she doesn't understand, so Haiyansong suggests that if the boy can prove his clan's methods work, they can add them to their own. He talks about those strange ways of training, which leaves Mujene totally surprised. The boy is left wondering what it all means, and if they will really take his training the way he wants. Sitting as the master of the Arhat Hall, Haiyansong was a monk chasing enlightenment who didn't shy away from hard choices to help Shaolin grow. Bringing in Mujene's training was too risky, so it would be safer to try it out on the young students of the Arhat Hall first. If he made a mistake, he'd face punishment, but he chose to take the risk and keep building Shaolin's legendary past. After all, if this training method really works, it can make the temple's foundation rock solid. Mujene shakes his head and asks, "Why should it be me?" while Master Haiyansong watches him with a hard look. Then he shouts back, asking, "Who else could it be?" But the boy argues that with over 70 rookies to train, he has no time to search for the culprit. Furthermore, he notes that the other disciples treat him like a freak and won't accept him. And while it would be nice to train the new recruits since he is now part of Shaolin, he just doesn't want to bother with those brats. Mujene then tells them that if they truly want to try his methods, he has a few conditions to set first. Later, the young monks sleep soundly in their rooms until a sudden shout of "Get up!" wakes the boys, who rush out of the room and ask if morning training has begun, even though the bell hasn't rung yet. A voice shouts, "You didn't come to Shaolin to sleep," ordering them to run to the training grounds while the monks stand outside in the dark, confused by the sudden command. Then they spot Mujene standing in the courtyard alongside Master Haizhong and Beep Gang. The master says they woke up early because we added some warm-up moves to our morning training. Master Haizhong also says that Mujene will now lead the morning training. Just as we feared, the other rookies were unhappy with the news since they are the same age and he wasn't liked by them. Now that he holds the power, the boy realizes he can't afford to show any weakness. Then he shouts to get everyone's attention and switches into instructor mode, announcing that morning training will now follow his clan's rules, declaring that from today on he is no longer one of them and must be called instructor, while Master Haizhong watches from afar and remarks that the little rascal never stops surprising them. The Bop Gang sees the fire in the boy's eyes and knows he is serious. Mute laughs at the mess, while another monk hides a smile behind him. The group scoffed at his idea and asked why they should listen, but Mujene challenged them by asking if they'd still be laughing after that morning's training, forcing the others to step back. The young instructor points out anyone who is laughing at him or has an issue with him, telling them to come forward. As the group moves forward, Mujene steps up and dares them, saying if he stumbles even for a second, he'll quit his post and join them as a student. So he stands in the middle of the courtyard surrounded by the monks, checks if everyone is there, and declares he'll fight them all at once while getting ready for the battle. On his word, the boys sprinted toward him. Everyone throws a punch at him at the same time in a wild flurry of blows. Suddenly, everyone freezes as a monk shouts, "Where did he go?" Before Mujene suddenly pops up from the ground and challenges, "That's all you've got." Then, in a flash, he moves behind one of the attackers. Then he locks his arm around him while the others scream, "Do something," as Mujene readies a chain fist to strike the two monks standing before him. Suddenly, every single attacker crashed to the ground, beaten and defeated. He looks at the rest of the group and asks, "Does anyone want more?" The other disciples.